Here we are in the convention center in Chicago, where the night's proceedings have just wrapped up. The crowd are starting to make their way out, but in a state of some excitement, because what a night it's been. The sheer high wattage star power on the stage of first Michelle and then Barack Obama has everybody in a tizzy, because whatever you think of their politics, they are some very powerful speakers, and they gave us quite a night tonight.
Yeah, and it's a tizzy with a purpose, that's the point. It's not just a tizzy to get the crowd going and have a lot of excitement. It's a tizzy that is designed, isn't it, to bring to this campaign a sense of purpose and hope, that Obama word, and also positivity that they can use now to forge a campaign that's a different kind of campaign and turn a page, and frankly turn a page to an extent on Joe Biden. So it's a really big deal, and it could have huge political consequences, which we should talk about now. So welcome to Americast.
Americast from BBC News.
Hello, it's Sarah here at the convention center in Chicago.
Rather excitingly, it's Justin sitting right next to her.
And equally excitingly, it's Anthony on the other side of you.
It is a privilege to be in the middle of the two of you. So there was quite a sense of anticipation before, I would say, not just the two biggest stars in the Democratic Party, the two biggest political stars in the world, probably, because of how well they speak and how much excitement they generate, came on stage. It was like the headline at a festival, wasn't it?
It's not fair, is it, that those two are so good? I mean, that one family, for goodness sake. It is extraordinary, because you always think of him, obviously, and everyone in the world's heard of Obama and knows about him. Although a lot of younger people, of course, don't remember the Obama presidency, which is a point we might get to in a second. But for her, she has become, in the years, in a sense, since they were in the White House, she's become this force. And she's not just a kind of, influencer, TikTok-y sort of person. She's actually got an ability to hold a crowd. Yeah. And to use the moment and to feel when to talk at pace and when not to, and all of that kind of stuff that her husband has always had. I was just so impressed.
She can modulate really well, and she can go from amping up the crowd to being really heartfelt and emotional. And given how infrequently she talks and speaks publicly compared to Barack Obama, who does this all the time, and he's a politician. Her ability, her talent is remarkable. I mean, Donald Trump had a pro wrestler, Hulk Hogan, introduce him at the Republican convention, but Kamala Harris had a tag team tonight, and they each had their own strategies, and they really worked well together and fed off each other, I thought.
Yeah, and of course, one of the things that's really influential about Michelle Obama is, as you say, Anthony, she doesn't come out that often, but she's really admired in a kind of ways, though she's not just a party politician, she's never been an elected politician. And so she says things like, one of her famous mottos is, when they go low, we go high. And during this election, you wonder necessarily if that's a very good idea when you think of just how low it can go sometimes. But that was the sort of inspiring mood I thought she was bringing to this. Both of them, they had a message, not just the message of vote for Kamala Harris, but a message of how to run the campaign, what the mood should be, what the tactics should be, that they delivered quite subtly but effectively.
She's frightening, though, I have to say. I mean, she's got a sternness about her. She reminds me, actually, of my colleague Michelle Hussein, who I present with in London on the Today programme. He's similarly she's lovely, Michelle, and she's a good friend of mine, but I wouldn't want to kind of cross her. Yeah. And you really get the impression, don't you, with Michelle Obama, you would not want to cross her. And that's important, actually, because that steeliness people feed off.
Yeah, just that kind of narrow eyes look sometimes definitely has a lot of power.
Anthony, you have misbehaved. You really wouldn't want to be on her wrong side. And I think, she uses that politically, doesn't she?
And, Sarah, that was her slogan. That was the thing she's probably best known for from that 2016 convention speech about going low and staying high. But she had some sharp elbows tonight. I mean, she implied that Donald Trump was a racist, that he said racist and misogynist things, kind of implied that he was a con man, that he was smearing them and was trying to make people hate them when Barack Obama was in the White House. I thought she landed more punches than Barack Obama did, and Barack Obama, towards the end of his speech, actually was trying to cast a bigger net. Was talking about your parent or your grandparent who said things you don't agree with, but you have to understand that their heart's in the right place.
It's so true. So Obama was starting to go down a thing he's done before, but he was kind of having a go at the progressive left in a way of saying, "Come on, we're all of us capable of being intolerant and all the rest of it." She wasn't having any of that. She was the hitman.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Use of humour too.
Yes.
I mean, use of humour. It's so important, isn't it, in politics, particularly if you're trying to project to the nation that this is going to be a campaign that is positive and humane and all the rest of it. And both of them had jokes, but I mean, well, two things really struck me about Barack Obama. Number one, did he make a joke about penis size?
The childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people did get that from it, but of course it was subtle and it was funny and it was still, family rated and all the rest of it. And it's the use of that is so clever, because of course humor is then something that people talk about and they repeat and they are attracted to, and that's the great skill.
Donald Trump, man, because he hates being mocked and he hates being laughed at. And remember, we went through the whole business about whether he's got small hands as well, so that's obviously something he's sensitive about, size. But this is where we came in the first place, isn't it? Donald Trump running those birther conspiracy theories about Barack Obama, saying that he hadn't been born in the United States. Barack Obama made fun of him at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
The rest is history.
Yeah, look what he set off.
And there was a little bit of that there too with the size thing. I mean, Barack Obama was mocking Donald Trump again. I also thought it was interesting the way Kamala Harris the way Michelle Obama talked about Kamala Harris in very personal terms about their mothers and what they had in common despite being separated by an ocean. I mean, she did it in a heartfelt, personal way that I don't think anyone else in these two nights has been able to do, to really boost Kamala Harris and explain why she's relatable, why she is someone who will look out for your family as well as her own. Whereas Barack Obama talked policy. He was talking about housing costs and things like that, which, again, they were working together to kind of each hit.
But when
hit
Obama,
moments.
that's really interesting because he did talk policy, but when he talked about Trump, he didn't build him up, which is one of the things that I think we've been saying in the past. Joe Biden keeps building Donald Trump up into this kind of boogeyman, this scary, big, powerful figure. And Obama did the opposite, really, just sort of chopped him down with a bit of humor.
We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse.
And that, brought the house down, but also it's just a really, really sharp, good political communication because you remember it, but you don't have to remember all the detail, and you don't have to build up the person. You just think, maybe I don't want to go back down that road. And that kind of, those are the tricks of the trade that both of the Obamas brought to this place tonight.
And I want to ask you both what your impression was of one other thing, though, because they're not infallible, these Obamas, and I wonder if they just got something a little bit wrong. It's one thing to poke fun at Donald Trump. You have to respect the people who support and vote for Donald Trump if you want to win them over. And when Barack Obama was talking about Trump only being in it for his rich friends, wanting to allow big corporations to pollute the country, wanting large tax cuts, as though he was talking about a kind of Republican elite from many, many years ago. These aren't who Trump supporters are, people who are going to benefit from a millionaire's tax cut. These are people in what they call the middle class in America, we would call the working class. And I wondered if he was actually reaching out to the wrong place there. I mean, not as disastrously as when Hillary Clinton talked about Trump supporters being a basket of deplorables, but the Democrats need to offer more respect, I think, to Trump supporters if they want to get an audience with them.
Yeah, Kamala Harris isn't running against Mitt Romney, running against Donald Trump. And you're right. I mean, Donald Trump's appeal is a lot of working class, white working class voters that aren't thinking about tax cuts. They're thinking about immigration and trade and crime. And Barack Obama really didn't touch on that quite as much and didn't paint Donald Trump in a way that would knock him off that kind of a mark.
Or did he make an appeal, though, or describe an America that would help people like that, people who think that they've been left behind, that they're being ignored by the system, make them feel included, make them feel that he cares about them, that this is a party that's going to give them a chance?
You see, he had a very good line, didn't he, about democracy. So all the shtick is about Trump, he's a threat to democracy, all the shtick from the Democrats. Obama didn't say that. He said, we've got to make democracy work for people. We've got to persuade people. I can't remember the exact phrase. His view was, let's not say democracy's about to go. Let's say, look, we can make democracy work for you. And that was an attempt, I think, to answer your point that you've got to reach out to people.
It's a kind of highfalutin one, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that is Obama. You see, that was always his problem. I mean, his favourite music is the Bach cello suites, which, that's. He is a highfalutin guy, isn't he?
Professorial was always the dig on him, that
Yeah.
he tended to speak a little too much above the audience. Although when he was talking about policy, he talked about housing prices, he talked about prescription drugs, he talked about making college more affordable. So those are the kinds of things, I think, that would appeal to people of lesser means. And then when he went on to talk about having to reach out to other voters and cast a big net and appeal to people who don't always agree with you, that we have more in common than we don't, I think that was a little bit of it as well. But you're right, his attacks on Donald Trump were a little bit too much White House Correspondents' Dinner, let's make fun of him, whereas Michelle Obama's were much more targeted towards hitting Donald Trump where it hurts, as a kind of a small, mean little man.
Now, they both had a very particular message about how hard the Democrats are going to have to work. And I thought that was interesting and probably quite valuable for everybody here, because there was a state of very, very high excitement. I mean, everybody's on a high here anyway. They're so enthused about their new candidate. And now they've got both of the Obamas speaking to them. I mean, you would think victory was guaranteed if you just took the temperature in the convention center. And of course it's not. And both Michelle and Barack were saying this is going to be really tight. It's going to come down to a few 100,000 votes, and you all have to work between now and polling day. And I think that was probably a well-advised warning to everybody here not to go away and feel complacent about it.
Do we think it is going to have an impact? Do we think the joint Obama speech actually changes this campaign? Because you look back to, when was that, Anthony? It would have been 2012, so Obama's up against Mitt Romney, and Bill Clinton comes to the convention and he makes an absolutely barnstorming speech there, and Obama himself afterwards says, gosh, he's communicator-in-chief or whatever he said. And I think the thinking was then, albeit he still struggled, Obama, against Mitt Romney and kind of lost the first debate, but the thinking was then that it sort of reset the campaign along lines that they then thought they could follow for the rest of the campaign. I wonder whether this has done that this time around.
No, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but it definitely enthused the people here. I think it laid out a strategy that they want Kamala Harris to pursue, to not talk down to the voters, to cast a big net. They gave a blueprint, what they think is a blueprint, which I think they want Democrats across the board to follow. And I think they did, do a good job of kind of boosting Kamala Harris. I mean, what we talked about, days now is that Kamala Harris is kind of an unknown to a lot of American voters, and they need to fill in the gaps before the Republicans fill in the gaps for them. Well, both Michelle Obama and Barack Obama tried to do some of that. And so I think if there were Americans, undecided Americans, Americans who were, deciding whether to vote or not even, watch that, I think they got a picture of Kamala Harris as someone that, they could support. That is not an extreme liberal the way Donald Trump, the Republicans are going to attack her as. And that was actually something Michelle Obama said, right? Is like, they're going to come after her. We've seen it before. They did it to us. They're going to do it to her. You have to be ready for that.
But people they're reaching out to who might be deciding whether or not to vote or how they're going to vote, they probably weren't watching this. I mean, it's committed Democrats who were watching these speeches.
Who does watch
isn't
them
it?
in the modern age? I mean, we need Mariana here for this, but I mean, frankly, no one really. I mean,
Yeah, the clips might travel,
Not
and
live,
Mariana
yeah.
can tell us what
Yeah.
she ends up
Yeah.
seeing on the undercover voters feeds and
Yeah.
which clips it is that build through. I'm intrigued because you could see tonight how the hope and change message that we got from the Obamas when they were campaigning actually aligns quite closely with the sort of joyful, sunny tones and vibes that we've been getting from the Harris-Walz campaign, completely different from the way Joe Biden was running his campaign. Can that last, though? The thing is, it's such a short amount of time, fewer than 80 days until polling day now. Wonderful honeymoon so far for Kamala Harris. Stuff is going to go wrong. It's inevitable. She's going to have big problems to
said
deal
that,
with.
didn't
Yeah, they're human. They'll make mistakes.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. That's what they said.
Yeah.
But can you keep pushing through in a joyful and a sunny way, or is she just going to have to roll her sleeves up and get a bit scrappier at some point?
Well, I mean, it just seems to me that the vibe thing, and we talk about vibe elections and all the rest of it, and is she at some stage going to have to come up with a load of policies and go through lists of things she's going to do and all the rest of it? I mean, I think it is so late in the day, and this is such a weird summer, that actually probably the vibes do it, and it's got to be constant cheerfulness, because that's what they've hit on as being their kind of USP, as it were this time round. But I think as well as that, I think they can kind of use Joe Biden. Poor guy, he's not going to like this, but they're going to contrast themselves with Donald Trump. I think it's almost equally important now for them to contrast themselves with Biden and with, as you say, the way that he was campaigning. Because in a sense, looking around the nation and trying to explain to ourselves why the polls have changed, and let's be clear, they're not changed kind of dramatically in the sense that she's now suddenly ahead, but they have changed, there's no question about that. So what is it that has changed, given that she didn't come out with no particular policies? Why are some people suddenly feeling different? And I think one of the reasons is probably that they just don't have this sense of being weighed down by the presence of Joe Biden, actually, or the fight between these two elderly men that was so depressing. Yeah. Psychologically depressing for Americans, and this is my point, made them feel upset about crime, upset about the southern border, upset about the inflation that there's been. And now suddenly, if they no longer have that cause of the upset, in a sense, it doesn't matter if all of those things don't change, the cause of the upset has changed, and that can just lighten the mood and change everything. So I suppose what I'm kind of moving myself towards arguing is actually the heck with the policies. Just do all the happy clappy stuff, and it might work.
It
Yeah,
might work.
Joe Biden was never brat, after all. But well, let me test the theory with you, Anthony, because of course in America the president's the head of state, completely different for us in the UK. To what extent does it matter how the president represents what Americans want their nation to represent? And so if it is a fight between two old men, neither of whom you like very much, it's a bit depressing about the nation being old, it not looking futuristic or youthful or strong, and that if you've got somebody with a more optimistic message but who just embodies, just in their personality, something that is a little bit more forward looking and a bit more exciting, that's enough to draw people to the idea that this is somebody who could represent and embody your nation.
Yeah, Yeah, that's allowed her to be the change candidate, despite the fact that her party has held the White House for 3.5 years now, and that she is the vice president of the United States, because she looks different than the two candidates that were running since the beginning of this year. And we talked about at the beginning of this year how neither of them were popular, and how the American public said they didn't want these two people. So just by coming in, she's been able to be a pretty remarkable contrast. It helps also that she's running against someone who, while not an incumbent, does have 4 years. So she can make that pitch, which we heard her make about we're not going back. I mean, she's basically running like she is the challenger and Donald Trump is the incumbent. And, that's a pretty remarkable little twist, given, that she was joined at the hip with Joe Biden up until 3 weeks ago.
I have another question for you as an American. Why is it that people come to these conventions and do things like wear hats with cheese on them and stuff, and then go back to their communities and presumably live perfectly ordinary lives? I mean, there's something about the kind of the enthusiasm. The Americans allow yourselves to be enthusiastic about things because they haven't imbibed our kind of sense of snooty irony.
Or cynicism.
Or whatever.
Well, they're unembarrassable.
Unembarrassable. And that's still, in spite of all the changes and all the kind of horrors, in a sense, of American life and the divisions and all the rest of it, there is a kind of basic, I don't want to kind of sound as if I'm trying to do a kind of poor man's Barack Obama speech now, but it just strikes me as an outsider, but someone who loves this place, that there is something still basically, fundamentally, kind of open-faced about this country, and if they can tap into that, it just seems to me to be important.
And there's a kind of a pride about being American, and not only being American, but being from someplace in America. I mean, let's talk about that roll call from the states earlier today, which was hilarious and fun and energetic. I mean, you had each state with all of the delegates there proclaiming how great their state was. Each state had its own musical introduction with some sort of tie to the state. In fact, there's a playlist now people put together for each opening song for all the states. And you had the Wisconsin Cheeseheads, you had people from Nebraska with corn on their head, you had Lil Jon, the rapper, come out for Georgia.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president.
None of that mattered, because actually they all voted virtually weeks ago, which we've also talked about. But it was fun, and it was raucous, and everyone had light up bracelets, and they had the spotlight spinning around. I've never seen the roll call of the states, which was kind of an obligatory thing that they did to certify the winner of the primaries, presented in a kind of entertainment, like a tour of like, oh, look at all of the Americana and all this kind of quirkiness and glory, with everyone kind of embracing it.
Going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. P.P. Harris, come to the wall. P.P. Harris.
Can you imagine doing that in Britain, Sarah? Kent, yeah. What? Galashiels. It just wouldn't work.
Yorkshire, home of puddings.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you're onto something.
Yeah, maybe it would work.
That'll happen. I can't see it. It is one of the things that is extraordinary about this country. And those things, I mean, I do think it's sort of a semi-serious point. If you can tap into those things, who knows? The country has been, as people have said to us on Americast, the country's been in worse shape before, and in the late 60s and all the rest of it, and all the assassinations and all the awful things that have happened here. Goodness, there was a civil war not that long ago, and well, it doesn't feel that long ago to me. I'm older than you. And the country has this incredible ability to reinvent itself, and that's what the Obamas have been trying to tap into.
Yeah, but reinvent itself how quickly? Because Anthony and I were in Milwaukee 4 weeks ago.
End of July, so not even.
And they were jubilant. They were walking on water. Their guy had just survived an assassination attempt. They thought he had been saved by God to retake the presidency. It was a different move, but it was one that was buoyant and excited and enthusiastic. And we left there thinking that they were on course for victory. So good vibes matter a lot and send a message to the electorate, but they don't always last. Well, that's it from here tonight, but we'll have another episode tomorrow. Another big lineup. We've got Bill Clinton, Tim Walz, and other people. Anthony, who else?
I know who else. Those are the big ones.
We always turn to you for
Shapiro.
facts,
I think
Anthony.
Shapiro's talking tomorrow.
Josh
Yeah.
Shapiro,
Yeah.
the Pennsylvania
Yeah.
governor,
Yeah.
and musical acts. We keep not getting our
Where's
musical
James
acts.
Taylor? Where's James
I know,
Taylor?
poor James Taylor. He got bumped.
He got bumped from the first. I was half expecting him to kind of force his way on, but ahead of the Obamas. Has he gone off in a half? We need to explore what's happened to James Taylor, I think.
And I saw John Legend here today, but I didn't see him
I know
on stage.
he's supposed to be performing at some point during this. I don't know if it's tomorrow or Thursday.
Hey, we'll have them all. Join us tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Americast.
Americast from BBC News.